Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. We got another great guest. His name is Jason Cutter from Cutter Consulting Group. And the reason I brought him on was because he has a vast amount of experience in call centers. And a lot of times people misconstrue what a call center really is. Anytime you have an inbound effort coming on, you can really consider that as a call center. But a lot of people think of call centers like, okay, I've got to hire all these teams, or I do an outsourced type role. So we talk about call centers on this and how you can grow your revenue using call centers. But we then quickly deviated into a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and I found with Jason as well to his, which is how do you build a sales team the right way? Like, what do you got to do when you have problems in your company? And instead of just forging forward and trying to, put a solution in to solve that problem, how about stepping back and let's figure out and assess what's going on first and figure out before we, prescribe something, we diagnose. And we go in deep into this subject matter throughout that. And then we come back to call centers because that was the focus originally of this particular podcast. So super smart guy. I think you'll like him. Again, his name's Jason Cutter. Let's bring him on in. Jason, welcome to the call. Welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's interesting for the people listening here. You and I were just talking, and you moved to Florida 6 months ago. I moved to Florida 6 months ago, and we both moved right in the middle of the summer heat from where we were. So, but you're down in Southwest Florida, correct?
Yep.
All right. And for those of you who are wondering where I am, I'm up in the Orlando area. And when you move here in the summertime, let me tell you, it's hot. It's hot, hot, hot. So, and if you're not used to it, like I wasn't, you wonder why you moved here. But now, being late November, it's very, very, very nice. So, but we didn't come here to talk about that, obviously. We came here to talk about call centers and how people can use call centers, why they should and why they should not use call centers as a revenue growth strategy in their business. And Jason you have a lot of experience in doing this. And so I think I'd ask the first question, like, why should somebody consider using a call center versus just maybe building a sales team or something of that nature? What's the advantage of using a call center?
Like if we're talking about using an outsourced or a third-party call center, I mean, there's lots of reasons to do it. There's also tons of reasons not to do it. I think one of the biggest things, especially if we're talking in the B2B space, or for a lot of people, they hear the words call center, and they think like big, 100 seats, 1,000 seats, giant building, mostly customer service support. You just have this, you just hear call center and you just have this vision of what a call center is. Or you hear call center and you think of like boiler room, where it's just like a bunch of people in there trying to sell, and it has these different connotations. And really what we're talking about is any kind of organized inside telesales environment, right? That's being run like that. It's, it's inside versus outside sales. And I think that's helpful because a lot of times, especially B2B, they're thinking, well, I don't use call centers, I'm B2B. And it's like, well, that could be very valuable, especially depending on what you're looking for help with, or what would help your business the most, especially for revenue, which is it appointment setting? Is it lead generation? Is it actually closing sales? And there's so many ways to do it. And again, like I said, there's also reasons not to do it. So I'll leave it up to you, Doug, where we want to go first with that.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, look, if you have somebody answering the phones, if you have a front desk person, you got a call center. You just don't realize
Basically.
it.
Yep. And you would never call it that, right? And that's why I usually say the word call center, and then I preface it with like inside, telephone, anything related.
Right. And so if we can take those inbound calls coming in and turn them into prospects or turn them into potential buyers, because we're training the people the right way on how to do so, then you have a call center, really, when it comes down to it. Now, you might have 1, 2, 3, 4 people, but again, like you said, Jason, most people wouldn't say, oh my gosh, I got a call center, right? I've got, this person on the front desk. I got 3 people on the front desk. I've got, 2 administrative assistants or whatever it is. And, that's their job. Well, I believe if we do this right, and I've proved this out with even small, entities like dental practices, right? The way that a person answers that phone, the way that they handle that call significantly affects the revenue in the company. And people don't think about it, but, the way they answer the call could either be, hey, let's move to the next step, or goodbye.
Yeah.
So if again, like you said, you can either outsource this process, but you can have it in-house. That's what I've experienced. And same thing when I talk to people about call centers, like, what are you, crazy at? But a lot of times you can use call centers too, outsourced as call overflow, right? Because a missed call is a lost sale in most cases. So what are some of the, like, let's say somebody goes, oh, okay, I never even thought about it this way, but I could turn, my people on the inbound play into, say, using some authentic persuasion or something to get something to a call. What would be something you would say, hey, look, if these are kind of the basic rules of doing this?
Yeah. So I think really there's some strategy involved first, which is understanding like what is your goal and where do you want to move people to, right? If it's potential customers, what does that sales process and sales cycle look like? Unfortunately, a lot of companies kind of jump in midstream without so much of the strategy, which is we need sales, we need clients, we need to enroll, right? And a lot of times where that comes from is the founder or the initial team, somebody in there is the salesperson, hopefully. And they've gotten to a point where it's like that person can sell. Now they want to have a team. And then what happens is they're just hiring people and teaching them what they know and hoping they know how to sell. And they're doing it over the phone or they're setting appointments. And then what happens is there's a tipping point where you want to start scaling and getting bigger and potentially having multiple parts in your sales process. So you have that appointment setter or that outbound, an SDR or telemarketer. And then you have the actual salesperson, the person that's moving someone forward and getting them to agree to become a client. And so what you have to do is strategize and understand, okay, where do we want to go? What does that whole process look like? And then if it's a current team you have in place, who do I have and what are their skills? What are they good at? Where do they fit in? How do I, as Jim Collins says in Good to Great, first step is to make sure that you got everyone on the bus that you want, and the other people off the bus, and then get them in the right seats, and then build that process and understand, okay, these people are good at this, and then hire for the rest of it. Fundamentally, none of that will matter unless you have some framework of systems, processes, as well as the metrics and the way to hold people accountable.
So let's talk a little bit about the systems and processes, because I'm constantly preaching on this CEO Sales Strategies podcast, systems process, people. And the reality is I know exactly what you're talking about, because if you don't have that and you can have the best efforts going, but it's like pulling the spark wire off a vehicle. If it's the electrical system's not running well, it's going to sputter or maybe even conk out. So the same thing with the sales process. So all right, I'm listening to this. I'm saying, Jason, you're a smart guy. You got my attention. What should I think about around process and systems that I should have before I actually pull the trigger on doing something like this?
Well, I think the first step, and it's going to take a little bit of a step back, is understanding. So this is, your podcast is for CEOs. So the CEOs listening to this is understanding what kind of CEO and or founder you are and where you fit in, right? Like there's visionary, because I've been a longtime subscriber to Michael Gerber's E-Myth type of model. So there's three types, right? There's the visionary, there's the technician, there's the manager. In my opinion, what there is there's the visionary, there's the sales person, and then there's the technician, right? So if someone starts a company, is it because they're good at making websites and now they thought, hey, I'm going to run a business making websites and have other people doing that? Or are they a visionary person who just comes up with great ideas and tries to get people to do all the parts for them? Or are they a salesperson? And what I see is that a lot of organizations, especially that struggle with the sales systems, they're actually started by a sales focused founder or CEO that they themselves can sell. And they can sell and I won't debate it on this show, but I can debate it if anyone wants. They are a natural born salesperson, which I don't think exists, but they've been doing it for so long. It's natural. Plus they're passionate about it. And they don't understand why everyone doesn't love their baby like they do, right? Like, because they think their baby is the best. That's why they started their company and no one else can sell it like them. That type of person isn't thinking scripts, systems, processes, CRMs. They're thinking, anybody I talk to wants this. So you should be able to talk to people and they should want this too, fill in the blank, service or product. And then that's where the rub happens. And in general, sales focused people don't like systems. They don't like process. They don't like scripts. They don't like CRMs. They don't like accountability. They just want to do what they do best, close deals, make some money, and then move on. And so it's really about putting those things in place. And here is the ultimate goal. This is what I work with a lot of companies on building. And at first it's a little shocking and they get a little triggered by it, but then it settles in and makes sense. Is what you want to do is you want to McDonaldize your sales operation, specifically sales. Right. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at McDonald's, they don't produce a high quality product. Like, let's just put that out there, right? Like, I'm not advocating for how great McDonald's is as a product, but what they do is they use entry level, minimum wage, returning workers. When I was a kid, like it was just teenagers. That's all it seemed to be. It was just teenagers working at McDonald's, and they literally reproduce the same hamburger, the same products, day in, day out, all over the world, billions of times a day with that level of staff. We've all been there. We all know what that's like. And they do it. And it's because there's a system. You put this with the fries, you do this, like there is a process. And so the key is with a sales operation, what systems can you put in place that then make it so that your people focus on one thing, which is the potential customers?
We're talking with Jason Cutter with Cutter Consulting Group, and we're talking about using call centers in your business. And Jason, I'm going to go right back to what you just said, because I can hear CEOs right now screaming, right? Like, oh, yeah. And, you just compared my business to McDonald's, right? And they run it with teenagers, and teenagers are hormone-filled people, and they're not always focused. But, my sales staff's supposed to be, right? I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. And yeah. And the reality is I have this battle. I just had this battle last week, and I'm calling it a battle because, as a person who's run companies myself and been in the CEO seat, I understand what it's like to be there. And I also understand what it's like to be the guy running the sales side of it. Right. And I had this battle last week. It's like this company could double in size, but they don't want to step back and assess the process of what's going on first. They just want to add more sales seats. And I'm trying to explain to them, you're going to grow, but are you losing money in the process?
Yeah.
Right. So if we step back and assess and we fix the issues, remove the cause of the problem, which is a problem right now for them, we won't be amplifying the problem. And so it is possible. I agree 100% with you. I've done this myself. It is possible to make sales almost a cookie cutter process, folks. And the reality is it doesn't have to be personality dependent. And so many people trying to hire people are hiring people because they're likable in sales versus can they actually create and sell through a systematic process and be a high top performer? And that's what I'm hearing loud and clear, that you're saying it is possible. I agree with you, it's possible. And I also agree there is no natural born salesperson. They are made. You might have talent, but
yeah. And just to clarify, Doug, I'm definitely not saying that people should run their sales teams like a McDonald's, right? And I know you're not saying that, but like that's the part that triggers people. But what I am saying is, what lessons can you take on a franchise model system, right? If you want Starbucks, you can choose Starbucks instead. I mean, I've been to McDonald's and Starbucks in many different parts of the world. It's literally always the same. That's why people like it, because I know, like when I'm in some other country, if I want a common experience, like one that I know, go to a Starbucks or a McDonald's or a KFC, right? The key is that you cannot scale, right? And I will say this, you cannot scale a sales operation based on natural born sales superstars, which is what a lot of organizations try to do. It's like, how do I find people who just know what to do? I don't have to manage them. I don't have to lead them. I don't have to hold them accountable. I don't have to bribe them more than what's in their comp plan. And they just show up and work so I can go off and do other things. Like literally, that's what I see CEOs struggle with, is like, they should be managing and flying at 30,000 feet and running the organization. They keep getting pulled in by sales and all the drama. And they're like, just get good people in there so we don't have to talk to them. Just abdicate to really good salespeople. But you can't scale that. You can't fill a room with 10, 50, 100, whatever it is that you want to get to. You just can't. And like your example, where it's like, yes, you can grow, but it's going to be expensive. It's like there's a hole in the bucket. You can pour more water in faster than's coming out, and you might fill the bucket up more, but you're still losing water out of the bottom. And it's those systems and putting things in place. Again, the ultimate goal of the systems and processes is not to take away the human element. It's not to like make them scripted robots. It's so that everything else that they should be doing is being done in some systematic way or is accountable, so that they can focus on what you need them for, which is to be humans talking to other scared, confused humans about making a decision.
I'm going to keep going down this path. I know we started with call centers, but this is something that we both know that people in business struggle with all the time. And, you know, I love when I evaluate a company, because I go there and they got, 3 superstars and they got 20 people who are sort of normal. And then they've got 10 people or so that is sort of like, should we keep them? Should we not keep them? Right. And these 3 superstars are carrying the team. Yep. And so the company and the CEO, for lack of better words, is pandering to these 3 superstars. And 2 out of the 3 are complete jerks, right? They're disruptive to the team. They're aggravational, rude, all of this stuff. And then I go and I say, we got to move these 2 people. And they go, no, my God, my company will fall, right? Well, why? Because you're not taking a ordinary sales skill set and sticking them through a very high defined process that gives them and yields the company a higher close rate and higher profitability. But they're relying on these superstars, which are basically causing the rest of the team. It never ceases to amaze me, Jason, when we move them down the trough a little bit or move them off on an island, right? The other team members automatically start progressing and rising up, right? And it's like, okay, but so relying on a few key people in the company to be salespeople is okay, as long as you have a working system behind it. And that's kind of the extra gravy. So I want to bring that up because I think you and I, and we haven't talked about this, but I think you and I would be on the same page on this one. But I know so many sales-centric CEOs are not, because they were salespeople themselves. So they think like a salesperson. They're not thinking like an ops person that's creating the system to expand that system, as you're saying. Would you agree or disagree with me?
100% agree, especially like if we're talking, there's a couple of things, right? So if it's a sales-focused founder or CEO, they think that people should be able to sell like them. They have a appreciation for those top sellers, even if they're toxic and terrible, because they see that as the money. They've always celebrated that person in organizations they've been at, and that's acceptable to them. And winners win and other people don't. And they're okay with that, right? Even if it costs them. And then they're emotionally attached to their revenue and their business. And so they kind of need it. And then it's this like unhealthy kind of relationship. And then what's interesting is if you look at the technology or the tech focused CEO founders who are ones who like they're into the product, right? Like, again, they're the web designer who wants to make a web designing company on their own. And then they have to hire salespeople. Then they don't like the salespeople and then they don't understand them. And then there's a rub there. I think the biggest thing, and this is the analogy I use all the time, is if we look at like sports, for example, I'm a big basketball fan. There's 12 players on an NBA team. Maybe one superstar. If they have one superstar, they usually don't win too much. Definitely not championships, because you can't do it on the back of one superstar, right? It takes a whole team. Right. Sometimes there's try to get 2 or 3 in there, but usually implodes after a little bit of time because you just can't manage it. There's not enough. It doesn't work. Teams that have risen and done well are maybe one superstar and then a whole bunch of supporting people that are also doing well. And then in a sales environment, how do you do that? 1 or 2 superstars, as long as they're a good cultural fit and they're not toxic. How do you move the B players into B plus or the C's into B's? Because if you can do that, it's not about turning all your C players into rock stars, but if you can get your C players to produce B results consistently, not just this week is good, next week is bad, but like consistently, game changer for most organizations.
Yeah, if you think about it in terms of numbers for the methodical people out there, would you rather have 3 superstars that are 50% over quota, or would you rather have 30 B players who are 10% over quota, right? Yeah. And the answer should be, I want both. But the reality is that if you lose a superstar, if you have that one team member that you're talking about on the basketball team, I don't know, Michael Jordan or whoever it might be, right?
Or they get injured, right? They're out sick, right? And then now what?
Well, now you're back to a team that is not producing the way it's supposed to. And all of a sudden they go from first place this year to, 7th place next year, that type of thing. So yeah. It's so important. This subject matter is so important for our listeners because so many people here, when they write in or talk to me, they're like, how do you deal with a sales team? I'm that technician. I started the business. I'm that web person. Yep. They're driving me nuts. Well, yep. Let me fill you in, folks. Salespeople are going to drive you crazy anyways. It's the nature of who they are, right? Unless you do exactly what Jason has been saying in the beginning here. You put it into a duplicatable, replicatable, accountable system, and then you can bring average salespeople into the system, train them up to make them better than average. And as long as you're making your numbers, you're better off that way, because then if you lose one person, you just, you fall by 2% versus, if you lose a superstar and you're just banking on those superstars, like you said, if they get hurt, they get sick, whatever it might be. Yep. All of a sudden you got a 25% drop in revenue going on in the company, right? So I'm going to try to tie in call centers a little bit on this one, but this is a subject that I'm super passionate about, and I can tell you are too. If we go back to call centers, what are some of the you shouldn't build a call center of any capacity whatsoever? Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why you shouldn't build a capacity or any call center?
Yeah. If we're like, well, I'm going to take this in 2 parts. One is this building an internal call center. And then the second one would be using an external third-party outsourced call center. So the first one is the reasons not to do it is you just don't know what you're doing. I liken it to playing sales versus being a sales professional or running a professional organization. Kind of like what you said earlier is that with that example of the company who wanted to double in size, right? Is, a lot of organizations think, well, okay, I've got these reps. If I can just hire more, that'll fix it, right? Or if I hire new reps, maybe they'll be good and I can get rid of the old ones and just raise the bar and raise the results that way. If that's the case, and you cannot actually produce consistent results, then building or increasing and creating this call center where you have the openers, the SDRs, the telemarketers, whatever that is, and then the closers, and like separating that out and then having that, like, it's not going to work. I promise that is going to fail. And you don't want to do that. You need to make sure your team of your current size can produce consistent, expected results. Now, that's not sexy. People want amazing results. They want superstar deals. They want tons of revenue. They all want to be the next unicorn. And I'm speaking to all these like CEOs, especially B2B SaaS. They all just want to be like the next rock stars out there. But until you can produce consistent expected results, you can't improve or duplicate that, right? Again, if your team, you have 2 reps, you have 5, you have 10, doesn't matter. If they close well this month or this quarter, and then next month or next quarter, it's in the toilet or it's inconsistent and it's not what you predicted, do not expand. You're expanding more unpredictable garbage, I promise. And so the key is like, can you produce it? Do you know why you're closing deals and why you're not closing deals? More than just personalities on the sales team. So that's the biggest thing, right? Is people just want to expand because they think that's going to solve it. And it's not, right? Like in any other realm, if you're not doing well at something, like doing more of that something that you're not doing well is not going to make it better, right? Like if you're not very good at working out, like working out twice a day instead of once a day, and you don't know what you're doing, is not going to get you better results, I promise. So that's one big part for the internal. The external, where I see a lot of companies really set themselves up to fail, is they internally do not know how to close deals consistently and as expected, right? Which is what I was just talking about. Then what they do is they turn to, or they get lured in by the appeal of an outsourced call center that says, we can close deals for you, or we can set appointments for you, and we can do these things, right? We can produce you, 5 appointments a day. We could close you 10 deals a month, like whatever that looks like. They make these promises. They talk about all these things. The company says, let me just delegate it to them and abdicate it to them because they know what they're doing and they're better at this. And I can just keep playing my game of whatever I do. The challenge is not that that company can't sell for you, but if you don't know how to sell your stuff, it's going to take them a while to learn how to sell your stuff. And most companies don't have the budget and the stomach for how long that's going to take and hemorrhaging along the way, right? Where it's like, this could cost you $7, $10, $15, $20,000 a month. And it might take 6 months for them to produce some kind of results, because they're trying to figure out what you haven't figured out. And if you haven't figured it out, it's going to be painful and expensive. And you have to have the pain tolerance for that, which some companies do, most companies don't.
And I'm in agreement with you, because what a lot of people don't understand is in using an outbound call center, an outsourced call center, or building an agency, which is, I do a lot of help with companies there, but let's build an external sales team, right? The same thing you said, it requires budget and it requires a stomach, and it also requires focus. So we have to manage an external sales team as much as we would manage an internal sales team. And going back to our previous conversation, if we can't scale our internal sales team because we don't have systems and processes and things that are well-defined, then when we pass that off, just as you said, there's going to be inconsistencies. And sometimes even worse, they're successful as the external, but they're really not selling it the way it's supposed to. So now when the company gets the client to onboard them onto their products or services, it's like, hey, we sell fencing. They sold fencing. They sold sword lessons, but we sell picket fences. And now we've got a problem because the client's like, I bought fencing, and it's like, well, wrong fencing. Not, So now they're going to have more issues. I see what's going on. And I want to ask you this question, because I think a lot of companies are and it's not to say that we shouldn't move along expeditiously or with the intent of moving fast. But I think companies move, just like when they're hiring top producers or trying to hire top producers, they make decisions too quickly, and they're not patient enough to actually, they hire somebody, 3 months later, they dump out. They hire another one, 3 months later, they dump out. Again, 3 months later, they dump out. Now, a year later, they find that right person, but they burned all that, 9 months worth of revenue going on. If they had just waited 5 months to find the right person, they would have had the right person for that additional 7 months going forward. And I think people, when it comes to building processes and putting systems and things like that, they're not willing to step back for a short period of time. That's what I see. Do you see that as well?
100%. There's so much in that. I mean, I see that too, where people jump in. They think that if I find this thing, it's going to be the solution for my issue, my challenge, or what I need right now. You see that with hiring. I see that with technology. I see a company that interacts with a B2B salesperson and then gets them all excited how this new CRM is going to be what's going to fix their problem of why they're not consistently closing deals. And the new CRM isn't the problem. But if your last CRM didn't do well and the team didn't care about it, I promise they won't care about the next one either. And they'll probably be mad that you switched. And then next time you try to switch, there'll be a mutiny or a revolt because they remember last time you did this to them. And then it just makes it worse. So it actually like this death spiral. But yes, companies do that where they're just looking and hoping that the next one is the one. It's almost like the gambler's dilemma, which is like the next hand will be the one that wins, right? Like the next rep that I hire, that will be the one. If I can just hire them, this seems good. They were really slick in the interview. They talked a really good game. They seem to sell me really well. But here's what's interesting, and I won't go into deep psychology stuff, but a lot of professional salespeople are good at getting people to move forward in the moment in the sale, but they don't care about the long term, right? They care about closing the deal and getting what they want in the moment. And if, that's what happens when you hire this person who talked really good game in the interview, then you put them on the floor or you put them into action and they're not really that good because they're good at closing, not account management, not long-term, right? Like not follow through. And I agree with you. I think it's about stepping back. I mean, it's like, I'll make an analogy on the life and relationship side where, you see somebody who literally just keeps dating the same kind of person and keep making mistakes because they keep picking the same kind of person because it just seems like that should work or they're just attracted to it instead of taking a step back and going, okay, what's not working? What do I want? What do I really want? What will I tolerate and not tolerate? And then looking for that person instead of just like hoping that it will eventually work out.
I call that the Dave syndrome because one of my buddies, Dave, he kept coming to me. He was doing exactly that, right? He was dating and it wasn't working out. Dating wasn't working out. One day I'm sitting with him, we're having a beverage and he goes to me, there are no good women out there at all. I said, Dave, there are no good women at all. He goes, not at all. I can't find any good woman out there whatsoever. Now, Dave's a sweet guy. He's like a really nice guy. So I asked him, I said, Dave, did you ever think that you might be looking in the wrong places for good women? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, Dave, you go out to these, I'll just say skanky bars, and you go and you're asking people who are going to these things, you connect with them, you go out on dates, it doesn't work out. I said, what kind of woman do you want? He goes, well, I want one that has principles and values. I said, do you want one that goes out to bars? There's nothing wrong with going to bars. He goes, no, I prefer, somebody a little bit more of a homebody. I'm like, okay, Dave, do you want her to, use foul language? He goes, no, I really don't, because my parents are very, religious and that type of thing. I said, Dave, do you want her to have a decent job? Yes. Well, how do you know the people in the bar have decent jobs? Do you ask them? Well, no, not really, right? And we go through this whole list. Turns out, I said, Dave, just kind of a thought here, but why don't you just go to church and see if there's some girls there that you might like, right? And go to a church that actually is in a demographic that has a very high income level and see what that works out.
Yeah.
Sure as heck, a month later, he found his soulmate. He's been with her ever since, right?
I love it.
Because he did what you said, Jason. He stepped back, assessed what really is the issue, and, it's like companies, a lot of times they think, oh, well, you know what? My sales team needs sales training. That's going to solve the problem, right? And I can see you smiling, grinning ear to ear because you know where I'm going with this. And, my first question to him is, are they even trainable?
Yeah.
Right. What are we trying to solve with the training? Right. Well, it goes back to what you said earlier. They're not using CRM. Well, guess what? They may not. Right. It may not be what they want to do or in the capacity. So let's figure out what the problem really is. Or, talk to another person, half their team's not following up. They're producing leads over $2 million a year and leads that are never being followed up. And they said, well, I'm going to fire my sales team. I go, that's not your problem.
Nope.
Right. I said, I said, firstly, part of the problem is you're producing too many leads for your sales team, so they're just cherry picking them. So what if we cut the leads back and now you're $2 million more profitable at this moment, and then we get that problem solved and now we move it forward? What do you think? Right. So I think there's so much wisdom in what you have been saying on this call. And anybody listening, I'm going to say something. Please listen to Jason. Please listen to Jason, because what he's saying is the absolute right way of doing this, not just doing it. So, Jason, if somebody wants to get a hold of you or learn more about you, where should they go?
So if they want to contact me, best thing is jason@cutterconsultinggroup.com. Super easy. Just reach out to me there. Want to find out more? So my book, which super excited, came out last year. You referenced it earlier, which is Selling with Authentic Persuasion. I have some podcasts. I have a bunch of content. I have some programs for reps and for leaders. jasoncutter.com is basically a central hub for everything, just to keep it simple with all the different ways that I help individuals and companies.
I want to thank you for being here. I always try to ask this question at the end, and sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a no. So if you could be any superhero, present or past, if you could just redo yourself and make yourself into a superhero, who would that be and what would you do to better the world?
Didn't think about this one in advance, so I'm just going to throw this out there. I would say Superman, for many reasons, which is, the ability to fly and bulletproof and all of these things, but just like to be able to use those different aspects to help people to make things better. The fighting crime side in a universal way. I mean, I think, that's big. I can't think of any other superheroes right now that would be more on the hope side that would help individuals with that. I mean, I think that's really what's needed right now is people realizing, what they can do and what they, what would help them feel fulfilled. So that's the best I can think of on the fly.
I find that a great answer because it's really the kind of salesperson that most people are looking for. Really, they're able to fly and produce, right?
Yeah.
They're able to be bulletproof. So, rejection, objections, whatever. And they're there to help people, which is win-win. I think that's the ideal sales profile for anybody. So you embody what you teach people to do. So thank you and answering that question. Jason Cutter of Cutter Consulting Group, thank you for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Until next time, everybody go out there, sell something and sell it in a win-win fashion, will you all? So Jason, thanks again for being here, sir.
Thanks, Doug.
All right. Was that a great episode of what? I mean, if you really think about it, his Superman answer was perfect, right? You got to get somebody to be able to fly. You got to get them to be bulletproof, and you got to get them so that they want to help other people and do the right thing. That's called win-win selling, right? You got to want to fly. You got that person who wants to go out and really, really, really blaze the trail and win. You want to have somebody bulletproof because they're going to experience rejection throughout the process. They're going to get objections, rejected, doors slammed in their face if they're still door knocking, which people still do today. Or social media or whatever it might be. And then you got to get somebody who understands how to help people, because that is the bridge that crosses all bridges, if you will. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is if you're trying to truly help someone, people can genuinely sense that, and it will bring a sense of trust. And trust sells more than any other skill set out there. So, trust is a skill set. Building it is, if you know how to do it. Building rapport, creating trust, that respect, and getting that likability going will go a long way in sales. In fact, I will tell you that if you could do that in a masterful way, the sale's almost closed. All you have to do is understand what they want, fulfill that with what you do, and guess what? They move forward in most cases. All right. So, and the last part about, making people lives better constantly is, playing win-win. You do the right thing by somebody. You walk away if it's not right. You help them if you can. And Jason had a lot of great stuff to say about what, you should do in a call center or what you shouldn't do. And part of that is, creating that process and fixing problems before you actually go to an outside or even an internal call center process. Because if you have challenges within the current sales team, creating more activity is just going to usually magnify the challenges. So If you have future requests for future podcast subject matter, please send me an email at doug@businesssuccessfactors.com or get me on LinkedIn at Doug Brown 1234. If you have any need, you want to build an outside sales agency, you want to build a what I would call an agency external, which could mean you want people actually selling for you on full commission, or you have any sales challenges, or you just have questions, get a hold of me and we'll see what we can do for you. Oh, one more thing, folks. If you like this podcast, please do me a favor, go up and give it a 5-star review. I would so much appreciate it. Once again, have a wonderful day and we'll talk to you again. Once again, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Go out, sell something, but do it in a win-win fashion and make it a great day.